She could run over a child live on TV. I'm going to vote for Kamala Harris. I'm never going to vote for Trump.
That's gnarly.
But the fact is, even though I think she'll make a good president, she's not a good candidate. If you remember from when she ran before, she tends to get real irritated with stuff she doesn't like.
Do you plan to visit the border?
Not today.
She's not real fast on her feet. Maybe she's better now.
Any Kamala Harris supporters out there that agree with this guy? Now, I'm really not sure if this is satire, but his first statement, it was wild. And how can somebody be a good president but not a good candidate? I mean, it just doesn't make sense. And I think CNN is waking up to the reality that Kamala Harris might not be the best person for the job. Or at least Jake Tapper is driving it right down the middle as he blasted ABC News for their extremely biased moderation of the debate. Even Donald Trump admitted that the CNN debate was much better and that both candidates were at least given time to speak without being fact-checked every single time. Here's what Jake Tapper had to say about all of this. And guys, before we get started, I just want to thank y'all so much for being here. Thank you for hitting the like button and subscribing to the channel. And thank you so much for joining us over in our amazing Patreon community. If you haven't joined us yet, hit the description. There is a link down below. You can join us over there. It takes about 5 seconds. From there, you'll get access to videos and posts that I just can't share here.
Vice President Harris began the debate by punting the first question on the economy.
Do you believe Americans are better off than they were 4 years ago?
It went on from there. Despite the economy being the #1 issue facing the country, the sitting vice president generally reverted to talking points about a few of her policy proposals. Even Harris allies today are saying that she needs to talk more about what she will do for Americans if elected. Senator Bernie Sanders will be here in a second to talk about more about the need for her to fill in some of those blanks. On the border, another vulnerable issue for Harris, she also dodged.
Would you have done anything differently from President Biden on this?
So I'm the only person on this stage who has prosecuted transnational criminal organizations for the trafficking of guns, drugs, and human beings.
Okay, that wasn't the question.
Wow, he is now firing shots at ABC with this. Because we know that the moderators in the debate just kind of kept pushing back on Donald Trump, even though his answers were directly related to the questions. The only problem was that they wanted to blame him for any issues that were being discussed. And what he said was true. Instead of answering questions, Kamala Harris was instead going back to talking points that she had memorized beforehand, just to prove that Jake Tapper is spot on here. Remember what she said about the economy and how she suddenly discussed growing up in the middle class? Well, here's a different interview with the exact same answer.
At the debate the other night, you talked about creating an opportunity economy. I wonder if we can drill down on that a little bit. When we talk about bringing down prices and making life more affordable for people, what are one or two specific things you have in mind for that?
Well, I'll start with this. I grew up a middle-class kid. My mother raised my sister and me. She worked very hard. She was able to finally save up enough money to buy our first house when I was a teenager. I grew up in a community of hardworking people, you know, construction workers and nurses and teachers. And I try to explain to some people who may not have had the same experience, you know, but a lot of people will relate to this. You know, and creating opportunity for people, for example, to start a small business. My mother, you know, worked long hours, and our neighbor helped raise us. We used to call her, I still call her, our second mother. She was a small business owner. I love our small business owners.
Madam Vice President, that was not the question. And if we played a drinking game where people took shots every time she said, you know, we'd all be passed out within the first minute of her answer. This is Kamala using talking points, but at the same time, trying to appear as if she's talking off the cuff. Now, I want you guys to realize that ABC set up this interview, and they're probably just as surprised as the rest of us that Kamala Harris continues to use the exact same answer when asked about the economy. You know, I grew up as a middle class, you know, the spiel. She's pushing for the narrative that Donald Trump doesn't have a plan. She said it multiple times in the debate. And this is a classic, if not best example of gaslighting, because it is crystal clear and obvious that she's the one that doesn't have a plan because she can't even explain her plan for the economy. Now, just imagine her getting interviewed by multiple reporters and even fielding questions from everyday Americans. It's not going to be a pretty sight, but it's something that Donald Trump does regularly. Now, some within mainstream media are obviously biased against the former president. However, it doesn't end there. They're also openly saying that anyone who supports Donald Trump is just as bad as he is.
Also to do things, Ellie, that one would think are career-ending. The way he desecrated Arlington National Cemetery would be career-ending for a normal politician. His constant lies. But even this piece about saying, well, my building was the tallest until, you know, they brought down the World Trade Center. Now it's the second tallest. I mean, everything he does is despicable.
The reason why it doesn't end his career is because his supporters are just as despicable. All right. Like Trump's whole thing, he's a narcissist, right? And so his whole thing is to have a complete lack of compassion and empathy for everybody else. It's all about him. That's why he lies about 9/11. It's all about him, me. He's probably the least compassionate president we've had in 200 years since Andrew Jackson. And it works for him because his supporters are just as ungenerous and have just as little compassion and empathy for others. So when he is seen out there, essentially, as you guys have put it, desecrating our national symbols, when he is seen out there putting himself above all else, his supporters also want that to be the case. They want to do that in their own lives. That's how they think of themselves. And that's why it never hurts Trump when he takes these crass and classless actions. It's because his supporters think that being crass and classless is actually kind of cool.
Now, I'm not sure what Don King is doing here, but these are the same outlets that lie about Trump 24/7, which could explain why Jake Tapper is digging into this entire mess. And it's not just him. CNN as a whole has tried to keep things as centric as possible. Of course, there's exceptions, but they've pushed against one of the biggest lies of Kamala Harris. It's a lie that the Democratic Party and ABC News just keep pushing out to the people. They have argued that the former president is directly connected to Project 2025, even though Donald Trump has repeatedly, time and time again, denied knowing anything about it and says that the things that he has read are very extreme.
Listen to this claim from Congresswoman Lisa Blunt Rochester of Delaware about Project 2025 and former President Trump.
He has, with his friends, said the quiet parts out loud, but not only said them out loud, he wrote a book about it. What's it called? Project 2025.
That is false. Trump did not write Project 2025. The project's big policy document published by the Heritage Foundation think tank lists dozens of people as authors, editors, contributors. Donald Trump is not among them.
Now, guys, I'm not saying that CNN is now leaning more to the right. That's not what I'm saying. But they are providing information that's backed up by facts every now and then. Something that ABC News should also look into, since they're so-called journalists. Their job is to make sure that we're informed. It shouldn't matter if it happens to help one candidate or the other, as long as it's the actual truth. I read a book a long time ago, and it basically said something that was really powerful and profound to me. And it said something along the lines of, look at your 5 closest friends, and typically your income is an average of your 5 closest friends. Now, with that being said, I was kind of like thinking, okay, well, how do I find people who made way more than me so I could increase my chances of having a higher income? I mean, it only made sense, right? For less than a cup of coffee a day, for less than $1 a day, join a powerful network of people who are ready to change their lives for the better. And I will be putting a limit on this group, so get in while you can. Be positively motivated by others who are also on the same pursuit. So I'm going to leave a link for you guys so you can join me over on the Life Pursuit Network in the description down below this video. So check it out, guys, and let's not be a victim of this great wealth transfer that is taking place right now.
She did have a lot of momentum coming out of the convention, even coming out of her announcement as the presumptive nominee. I do think a lot of that already has stalled, and it's stalled principally around issues of policy. Kamala Harris has been completely opaque about what her policy positions actually are. She stands in favor of a tax on unrealized capital gains. She hasn't explained exactly how that would function. Why has she changed her position on health care, on Medicare for all, on other areas like bans on fracking? So I hope tonight gives Americans and voters what they deserve, which is a clear picture of both candidates, where they stand on policy.
Trump or Kamala? Kamal. Why so? Well, I say Kamal because she's been the greatest president of the 21st century. The First Step Jobs Act. In 2018, she lowered taxes for every single tax bracket. She's been tough on crime, tough on the border. I mean, Remain in Mexico policy, Title 42. She secured the southern border. We had the lowest level of illegal immigration ever seen in this country
isn't that
before.
Trump?
Oh, wait, what'd you say?
Wasn't that Trump?
Oh, wait, did I say Kamal?
You did say Kamala.
I meant to say Trump.
And that's what things are boiling down to, guys. Is the person you're voting for going to make your lives any easier? Now, the biggest difference is that Donald Trump has proven his worth in the White House. Now, on the other hand, Kamala Harris has been more of an afterthought throughout President Joe Biden's term. Matter of fact, a lot of people surveyed didn't even know who she was until about 2 months ago. She's only coming into the limelight because the commander-in-chief has trouble putting together a single sentence. With the election just a few weeks away, her campaign has been tasked to put up a front that would eclipse the achievements of Donald Trump during his term. And of course, they can't do it with facts since the numbers are against them. So instead, they focus on feelings and they try to invoke the emotions of voters across the country. And that's not working for a lot of undecided voters.
If you look at reporting from Reuters and the New York Times, they actually asked a number of undecided voters in key states, how did you view the candidates going in? How did you view them going out? Reuters, in fact, had 60%, I think it was 6 out of 10 voters who said they moved towards Trump afterwards. And when they were asked why, they said, because Kamala Harris was evasive on her answers around the economy. And I think she flubbed a really key opportunity she had in that very first question when she was asked, are you better off than you were 4 years ago? And she didn't show a single really ability to connect with voters who are struggling right now in this economy and with the price of goods and groceries and gas. And she missed a real key moment there. So
he spoke facts. She just basically repeated everything that Biden has said in the past.
What were your thoughts? She made, Donald Trump made a strong closing statement by saying, why didn't they do all the things that she's proposing during the 3.5 years that they've been in office? And Biden did this entire moderate stance back in 2020, and she's trying to do it again in 2024, but she didn't talk about her policy changes between 2020 and 2024. Her whole centrist, moderate stance is just a facade.
I think he just has more of a plan than Kamala Harris. I think he is a little more knowledgeable about the issues and policy.
I'm not saying that Trump is 100% perfect, but I think he's our best chance to get this country back on track, to have some decency, some morals, and some discipline.
I know that was a handful, but I want you to realize the common denominator here. What do these voters all have in common? Serious question. Let me know in the comments down below. What do y'all think? Well, guys, they all agree that Donald Trump is battle tested. Here's the guy you go to if you want this economy fixed, if you want the border to be resecured. They want him in that position because he has a proven track record that as president, he can produce results for the American people. Every Trump supporter and many independents saw the blatant bias of ABC's moderators, who appeared less like neutral hosts and more like active debaters helping Harris take on President Trump. Needless to say, guys, viewers are outraged. I've even heard some people outright condemn both ABC and Vice President Harris. Now, one comment online said ABC didn't have to give her the questions. She was clearly giving them the questions. Considering the fact that one of Kamala Harris's close friends runs ABC News only reinforces this idea. For a lot of Americans, the fix was in and the whole thing was rigged. Now, let me tell you guys, the people know what's what. Trump supporters, they make up about 48% of Americans who feel that there is a corrupt establishment trying to control their lives and rip them off. The obvious bias displayed by ABC News during the debate, it didn't help convince them otherwise. In fact, the whole thing only reinforced their beliefs and basically solidified Harris as part of that establishment. Now, I personally know people both in our comments and in real life that are basically downright furious about the debate, and they're frustrated by how Harris seemed to underestimate their intelligence. Harris didn't help their case either. Instead, the vice president spent much of her time pulling faces and trying to look cute for the audiences at home. And if you guys watched the whole thing, you would see how her behavior came across more like that of a spoiled teenager than a potential commander-in-chief of the country. Now again, this is the political elites at work, guys. You see, the elites, they tend to prioritize style over substance, and they expect everyone to play along as if they're at some fancy Washington cocktail party. But we know better. Most Americans don't appreciate being treated like they're ignorant, especially by polished, clever people who think that they can't see through the manipulation. Hit the like button and drop a quick yes in the comments down below if you guys agree with our message here. And if you want to help in our fight to get out the truth, you can also subscribe to the channel and tap that notification bell. Appreciate you guys. Now guys, the reality is Vice President Kamala Harris cannot afford to be honest with who she is, because admitting her true beliefs, not to mention the failures of the past 3.5 years, it would seriously hurt her campaign. And you can see that in the debate. The ABC moderators did everything that they could to prevent Donald Trump from exposing the truth about her. One of the most obvious moments was when they intervened, claiming no states allow babies to be left to die after birth. Now that statement was completely false. In Minnesota, under Governor Tim Walz, mind you, at least 8 babies have been left to die after botched abortions. It's a matter of public record. Now, if you're looking for a vice president who supports such policies, well then, Tampon Tim is your man. Meanwhile, what keeps President Donald Trump's supporters so loyal despite all of the controversies, from Russia investigations to impeachments and countless legal battles, is that he's not part of the typical polished political class. He's not one of those slick, manipulative elites. You may like or you may dislike Trump, admire him or not, but what you see is the real Trump. But in contrast, the debate between Harris, a privileged left-wing elitist, and Donald Trump, a relatable, straightforward guy that people can actually connect with, it's not that Trump can't navigate high society. After all, he owns country clubs. He can afford all the fancy tuxedos any politician might want, but he's a regular guy who doesn't hide who he really is. And we've seen this time and time again. In politics, authenticity always wins. Being true to yourself beats being bent out of shape just to become somebody your consultants have coached you to be. What the people in Kamala Harris's campaign just don't get is this has become a core truth in American politics for years. So the reason why the polls aren't showing up for Kamala Harris like they want it to be is because of the very simple fact that the elites completely misunderstood the debate's outcome. They simply place more value on style than substance when it's substance that American voters really want. They expected and accepted that ABC would be biased, one-sided, and arrogantly abrasive. In fact, I think being elitist as these people are, they probably believe that President Trump as an outsider deserved that kind of treatment. But yeah, leave it to the founding fathers. They understood that true freedom ultimately depends upon all the people, not just the elite. The Republican president Abraham Lincoln famously reminded the people that without popular sentiment, anything is possible. Without popular sentiment, nothing is possible. So now poll results show Trump's authenticity and substance outshining the ABC Harris team's dishonesty and over-rehearsed style, regardless of the columns and the quotes of those who totally misread what happened. Because mainstream media, they just don't get the true wisdom of the American people. In fact, it was veteran Democratic political consultant Joe Napolitan who once said to never underestimate the intelligence of the American people, nor overestimate the amount of information that they have. Because looking at that debate, I would say that Vice President Kamala Harris underestimated the intelligence of the American people that she wants to lead, and then she made matters worse by basically showing them how poor a president she would be. Now, this is the kind of information that could determine the outcome of this election as early as now. So, what do the Democrats do? Well, they up the inflammatory rhetoric and hope that somebody takes out Trump. I mean, we just saw the second assassination attempt on the former president, guys. Ryan Ruth, the suspect who hid out in the bushes at Donald Trump's West Palm Beach golf club, waiting for his shot at the ex-former president. AK-47 style rifle at the ready. Serial number filed off. This wasn't some 20-year-old without a political paper trail. Kind of like the first would-be assassin, Thomas Crooks. In fact, Ryan Ruth, 58 years old, frequently posted about politics on X and other social media, had a Biden-Harris sticker on his truck, and exclusively donated to Democratic candidates and causes dating all the way back to 2019. He even featured in a New York Times story last year, highlighting his efforts to recruit Afghan soldiers to fight against Russia in Ukraine. He was willing to fight in the Ukraine himself, but the Ukrainians didn't want him or his dubious recruits. In short, we got a very motivated man of action. And He was prepared to kill for a cause. And Democrats basically painted a target on former President Donald Trump with their dangerous rhetoric. As Ruth wrote in a tweet, democracy is on the ballot and we cannot lose. You know what that sounds like? Every Democrat in the DNC. I mean, just take a look at the kind of things that they're saying about the former president. Just days after the first assassination attempt, the anti-Trump Lincoln Project was again comparing Trump to Hitler. On July 19th, Democratic Senator Martin Heinrich, he called Trump an existential danger to our democracy. And even in the presidential debate, Kamala Harris accused Donald Trump of attacking the foundations of our democracy. Now, when you listen to Democrats or tune into MSNBC, they make you feel like the country is teetering on the edge of dictatorship. And if you're anything like Ryan Ruth, you probably say that if there were ever a moment for preemptive action, it's now. I mean, I don't understand why Democrats just don't get their own double standard. You see, for Democrats to condemn political violence while making their supporters believe that all freedoms are lost if Trump wins isn't just hypocritical, it's irresponsible. But what do you guys make of all this? Kamala Harris and her team are livid at the moment because they're just not sure where to go from here. Now, word is also going around that they're not happy with undecided voters that are now putting their chips on Donald Trump. Guys, I did a previous video on this topic. You gotta watch that one right after this one because it is for sure going to surprise you. Go to my channel and check that video out right after this one. But as always, thank you so much for hitting the like button and subscribing to the channel. I'll see you guys on the next one.